when you take a look at when you map out a process, and when I say map out a process, this is what I mean. I mean that, let's just say in the leasing process, the first part of it is you get a call or you prospect to try to get a tenant for the space. Or maybe even before that, you're doing a market survey and a tenant mix analysis to figure out what are your top uses, what's missing, what are your rents, etc. And then you go and market it, or you get the calls for it. And then you speak with the tenant or the prospective tenant. You do the site visit. If the site visit goes well, you do follow-ups. You do storytelling to make sure that they understand the reason why that retailer needs to be there. Then you send a letter of intent, or otherwise known as a proposal. You go back and forth a bunch of times. Then it gets into a draft lease, and then you go back and forth on that a bunch of times. Then it goes through to a lease signing. But on the retailer side, before that, there's like a real estate committee, and maybe on the landlord side, there might also be a real estate committee or approval process before signing that lease. And then once you sign the lease, that then it goes into the tenant opening phase, which that is in itself an entire process. So the process of getting a lease signed could be several months. And when you map out that process, and I went very quickly, you can do it in much more detail than that. You want to look at who's involved. When is the lease admin involved? When is the leasing associate involved? Is there a junior leasing person? When is the director of leasing involved? When is the asset manager involved? The owner involved? The property manager involved? The accounting involved? And so forth. And so once you look at that and you break it down into its specific individual tasks, then you can see, hey, which one of these parts of this process requires the least amount of actual creative human brain power, and takes the most amount of time to do. If both of those occur, then hey, maybe it's a really good candidate to try to replace that part of it with AI, and then or at least help it along with AI. So if you can compress the timeline from getting a lease sign from when you take on the listing, the leasing listing, to sign lease from, I don't know, 6 months to 2 months, I mean, that's a billions of dollars of value when you scale that across the United States. In fact, if you figure that out, you won the game. So